What's chirping, crickets? This is Kim from Kim Takes On. I'm Kim. Hi. And this is my co-producer, co-star, co-aider, and abetter, and anything else we can think of, Terrence the Wonder Duck. Terrence says hi and hopes you're having a terrific month. We're in the month of June. And so what I thought I would talk about this week is something that is really been important to me for a really long time. And I've probably mentioned it before. It's two words, but they mean a lot to a lot of different people. Star Wars. Star Wars, the first film, Episode 4, A New Hope, which my husband gets pissed off at me because I sometimes I'm one of those people that does the whole thing. Sometimes I try not to because I know some people get annoyed with it, so I kind of just do it in my head, and y'all don't want to go in there. It is dark and scary, and there's mice and cobwebs and stuff like that. But a lot of people have been bringing up that, Memorial Day just went by, and Star Wars was one of the first big Memorial Day films back in the 70s. And I was thinking about that, and I remember quite a bit about that whole time of my life. And I'd like to take y'all back there for a little bit and talk about it. I remember going to see Star Wars with my mother and my younger sister. She is 4 years younger than me, and I was quite young at the time. I won't say my age because a lady never says her age if she can avoid it. And no, Terrence, ducks who know the lady's age don't give her age away either unless you want to become Duck L'Orange. Zip it. You have to be firm sometimes. So anyway, where was I? Oh, right. So we went to the General Cinema in Saugus, Massachusetts, which is where I lived. And this was a very basic but very nice cinema. This is back when you actually had cinemas that didn't have 75 screens and surround sound and whatever else they do at theaters these days. It had 2 screens. That was it, 2 screens. And it was, I remember we went there and the line was around the building. There was, people standing outside the building and it looped all the way around. And I was like, I have never seen this many people for a movie in my entire life. And I just remember being like, wow. And, eventually we got in, got our seats, sat down. And the second those words appeared on the screen, and then that punch of music from John Williams' amazing score, something inside me resonated and responded to that. It was like if you hit a bell with a hammer and you get that one blast of sound, but there's still that ringing afterwards for a long time afterwards. That's kind of how I felt. And I remembered watching the movie and watching the characters and the story and everything like that. And I remember my eyes getting wider and wider and wider as the story was going on. And I remember thinking to myself, this is important. This movie is important to me. I also remember thinking, Episode 4, how did I miss the first 3 episodes? What happened? That'll come later. I also remember, watching the movie, being completely spellbound and sucked into the story like I'd never been sucked into a story before in a movie, with the possible exception of the monster films that I watched on Preacher Double Feature, which was something else that I did a lot. And I also remember turning and looking at my sister because I was thinking she has to be freaking out like I am. This has to be making her go crazy too. It must be blowing her mind and she's asleep. I also remember thinking, this is saying something about her and me. I don't know what it is, but it's saying something. My sister and I are very different people, and that is not a bad thing at all. My sister is an amazing person, and every family's got that one person in the family that's kind of off center. Hi. I don't know when I realized that was me in my family, but I'm like, okay, I'm fine with it. I'm okay with it. I have no problem with it. But that movie hit something so deep in me, and it never went away. And as I got older, it was always there. It was always part of who I was. I didn't build my whole identity around it, because I just didn't, because I really didn't know who I was yet. Sometimes I'm not entirely sure who I am now. I think we all go through that. Whether we want to admit it and be honest with ourselves is another thing entirely. But in a way, Star Wars was the jump off point for me, because it's really kind of funny, because Star Trek was already in my life. Star Trek was part of my life. I don't remember when Star Trek was not part of my life, because it was always in reruns and there were all these things, and it was always just there. But now, because of Star Wars, I was more like, okay, so this is science fiction, and oh, that's science fiction too. And there's other science fiction over here and over there and this and that and the other thing. And it was like building a tower with Legos. You start with a few and then you keep going and going and going and going. And it just builds higher and higher and higher. And I just started to realize that, whoa, there is so much science fiction out here. And science fiction, had branched off into fantasy and then horror and dark fantasy and all these other places that were just so amazing and sucked me into it and made me realize, wow, there is so much out there, and I want to know as much as I can and find out and experience all this stuff, because you can experience it and never leave your house. You can go to a galaxy far away. You can go to, the forests of Middle Earth. You can fight alongside Aslan and Narnia. You can, go where no man or women or anybody else has boldly gone before, etc., and so on and so forth. And Star Wars brought that home for me. And it made me realize that this was all out there, and nobody's stopping you from grabbing it. Nobody's stopping you from taking that ride. And I was just like, wow, this is awesome. And I never looked back. But there was something also very special about Star Wars for me. And that was Luke Skywalker. Before anybody else that I had a crush on, before Sam and Dean, before The Undertaker, before the myriad of bands in high school that I wanted to have. Let's go with carnal relations, because that sounds a little bit better. Not much, but considering the fact that in high school I was painfully shy, stop laughing, it's true. Before anybody else in my heart, there was Luke. And there was little me in the theater looking up at the screen with hearts in my eyes and going, I'm going to marry that man. Because to me, Luke was... When I was a young girl, I thought he was perfect. Because he was brave and he was so full of courage and believed in himself and believed he could be something beyond being a farm boy. and wound up changing the galaxy. And the more I watched him, the more I was just like, huh. And that never went away. It never went away. It changed as I got older, because when I was watching Luke, those first, I couldn't even tell you how many times I've seen Star Wars over the years. I'd really rather not dwell on it. As I got older, it was that those feelings that I had for Luke were always, they were like, I don't know, pure sounds kind of corny, but I mean, I suppose that's the way I viewed it, because I viewed him as, this is what love means. This is what love feels like. Looking at this man and being like, I want to marry him and be with him and be his little wife, and, we can save the galaxy together and blah, blah, blah. And I'm looking at that through the eyes of a little kid, because goodness knows I couldn't look at my parents and go, that's what love is, because my parents' relationship was dying on the vine. Please, anybody out there, if anybody's thinking about leaving somebody that you're in a relationship with, but you think, oh, we'll stay together for the kids, don't. That helps nobody. And I'm not slamming on anybody, not slamming on my parents in that respect. They tried. They thought they were doing the best thing they were. But when we got all the way up to the latest Star Wars films, starting with The Force Awakens, and we got the whole thing about Luke Skywalker is missing, I was like, what? When we got to the end of the movie and Rey finds Luke on this faraway planet, I burst into tears in the theater. Not even going to lie. Not even going to pretend I didn't. But with The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, I sat there in the theater feeling like I'm the only person in the theater, because nobody else could be feeling what I was feeling, which I realize is probably egotistical as F. I know. I'm sorry. But I was sitting there looking at Luke and being like, what happened? Where's the Jedi Knight that I knew, that I respected, that I cared for so deeply? Who is this broken man? Who is this? And then towards the end of The Force Awakens, he's back. And then halfway through the climax of the film, the whole thing with him and Kylo Ren and all that, I realized what was happening. And I was just sitting there to myself being like, no, this is not going to happen this way. And it did. And sometimes your friends are the people that lift you up when you're down. And sometimes your friends are the people that you really want to tell them, if you don't shut up, I'm getting out of this car and walking home, even though it's the dead of winter and it's freezing out. But you don't say that because you don't want to be that person. I was not the poster child for mental health that night. I got to be honest with you. After that movie, came home, locked myself in the bathroom and cried for an hour. And I know some people out there are going, that's stupid. You sat there and cried about a fictional character. That's ridiculous. And I know on some level, I know it is ridiculous. It's also ridiculous that my co-producer is a rubber duck. It's ridiculous that one morning I woke up and decided, you know what? I'm going to cut my hair off and have it dyed purple. It's also ridiculous. Half the things I do are probably ridiculous, but they make me happy. And if you don't like it, F off. I have officially hit that point in my life where I am a big supporter of the Book of Dilligaff. Look it up if you don't know what that is. But it was just that Luke was always there. And then he was gone. And on some level, I knew that it was ridiculous to mourn someone who wasn't real. But, like I said, some of us are just born to be ridiculous. We're just born this way, like Lady Gaga said. And I knew that Luke was going to come back as a Force spirit. I don't like the term Force ghost. There, I said it. I realize that might be an unpopular opinion, but the term Force ghost has never worked for me because ghosts are usually tied to a place. They can't leave. They can't move on. And people who become spirits through the Force don't seem to have that. So that's just my take, which I might be wrong about. If I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. PlatinumRoselle@yahoo.com. But seeing him again in the next film, even as a spirit, it helped, which is probably lame and probably dumb and probably silly. I don't care. And the fact that I got to meet Mark Hamill once was very, very cool. It was the summer before Return of the Jedi. And my mother took me to New York, me and my sister, to New York to see Mark in a production of Amadeus. And I got to meet him, and that was very cool. And he was so lovely and kind. And if I never... some little piece of me hopes that he'd see this, and just to say that, Mark, you are one of my favorite actors. You're one of my favorite people. And you meant, your character and your interpretation of the character meant so much to me, along with all of your other incredible work and your voiceover work, and the fact that you just took a moment out of your very busy schedule to, talk with a little dip from Massachusetts that wanted to meet you and got your autograph and thought you were just really sweet. What I wanted to talk about also in this is the serious part. Yes, Terrence, I know. He's very worried I'm going to say some sweary words. And I have told myself that I will conduct myself like a lady, and not curse like I really want to about certain people and certain reactions and all that kind of stuff. So there's that. I'm not saying this is not going to get heated and I'm not going to get pissed, but I will not be dropping any F-bombs. What I want to talk about is being a woman and being a Star Wars fan, and why, for some reason, certain people seem to feel like this is something that you cannot be both. And I don't know when this crap started. I don't know why this crap started. I mean, I have some ideas why this crap started, but I'd rather not be tossing out, verbal incendiary bombs, if that's okay with you guys. But as I mentioned, I was a Star Wars fan when I was a young girl. And nobody acted back then like, oh, Star Wars is only for boys. I never dealt with that. I mean, maybe because I grew up in Massachusetts and they've always prided themselves on being progressive up here. I don't know. But I mean, and it's not like I didn't have to deal with stereotypical gender pigeonholing bull crap like that. When I was younger, excuse me for just 2 seconds. My throat is dry. I need a drink. And this is just water. This is not vodka. Just wanted to let you know that. Friends don't let friends podcast drunk. Anyway, there would, people would say things like, oh, well, that's, if you play with trucks are for boys. You should be playing with this easy bake oven or something like that, I mean, not like I played with trucks or easy bake ovens, because trust me, nobody in my family would have given me something that I could set stuff on fire with. That would have been a terrible idea. Because I was more books. I was like, people would be like, well, what do you want for your birthday? Books. What do you want for Christmas? Books. And then when I got older, it was like, well, what do you want for your birthday? Money for books. What do you want for Christmas? Money for books or music or stuff like that. And eventually my parents finally tweaked on to just give her money. Give her money. She'll go in Boston. She'll come back with a bunch of crap that we won't know what it is, but she'll be happy and that'll be fine. My parents at least got me on certain levels. Yay for that. My mom always got me. She was like, she's weird, but she's happy. But nobody said, oh, well, you can't be a Star Wars fan because you're a girl. Back then. And I was already the weird kid in, grade school. And I didn't really care. I was like, I like my things. You like your things. They're not the same things. Not my problem. But as I got older, and I'm talking older into when the new Star Wars films started coming out, the, Force Awakens and all that stuff like that, I started hearing these rumblings of people being like, oh, well, there's too many women in Star Wars. Too many women for what? I was, when people would say like, oh, there's too many women in Star Wars, my first response is, too many women for what? Too many women that have lines? Too many women that are in positions of authority in the universe, and for some reason that intimidates you? So on and so forth. And this little group of men, I was going to say people, but I can't. It's just men. You started having this group of men that started treating female Star Wars fans like they were some kind of, I don't know, spies. Like you had to prove you were a Star Wars fan before they would accept you. Okay, first of all, I don't need your acceptance for jack effing crap. I don't need anybody's acceptance. I don't need to prove to you or anybody else how much I know about Star Wars before you will consider me a Star Wars fan. The thing that really cracks me up is that so many of these guys that act like they have some kind of proprietary hold on Star Wars weren't even born when the original films came out. And I'm like, excuse me, yeah, hi. I was there when these films came out. Don't you even try and act like I need to prove anything to you, because you will not like the response at all. And as I mentioned, there's this whole thing about there's too many women in Star Wars. And I'm sorry, my attitude toward that is, wow, you mean too many women who aren't wearing slave girl outfits? Can I just happen to remind you that the person or the being that put Leia in that slave girl outfit, she wound up throttling with the chains on the slave girl outfit. So I don't know what kind of fantasies you guys are cooking up, but y'all have issues. And the fact that there was actually a person, and I mean, if you feel like you need to do this, whatever, that edited together a version of one of the newer Star Wars films and removed all the women from it. I'm like, wow, that is one spectacular hang up. I mean, I really do not get gatekeeping. I don't get it. Because I'm sorry, if I met someone who's a Star Wars, if I was wearing something like, a Star Wars pin or something like that, and someone saw it and said, "Hey, you're a Star Wars fan? Cool, so am I." My first thing would be, "Hey, well, that's great. What's your favorite movie? Why do you like it? Do you have a favorite character?" Stuff like that. And I'm not asking those questions so I can surprise this person and say, "What happened in scene 17 of whichever movie or whatever," so I can be like, "Ha, you're not a real Star Wars fan." You know why I'm not doing that? Because that's dumb. If somebody likes the same thing, could you imagine if you were a baseball fan and you happen to sit next to somebody else and they happen to notice that you have a Red Sox cap on? I'm only using the Red Sox because I do live in Massachusetts. That's the only reason, because I don't know anything about baseball. I'm sorry. But you're like, "Oh, wow, you're a Red Sox fan too." And you start talking to this person and they say to you, "Well, if you're such a Red Sox fan, what happened in this game in, 1975, blah, 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 blah." You're going to be like, "Are you some kind of a weirdo?" "No, I'm trying to find out if you're a real Red Sox fan." "No, you're a nut and I'm leaving." I mean, I don't understand people who feel like, "Well, I'm going to try and run this other person down to prove I'm a better fan than them." You know who the best Star Wars fans are? They're the ones that act like every other fan. The ones that are like, "Hey, you like something and I like something. Let's talk about it. Maybe we'll find something else that we both like, and maybe you'll wind up making a really cool friend." That's being a fan. Some of these other people are the fans that make you remember that the term fan is actually short for the word fanatic. Don't be that person. Please don't be that person. Now, there's a lot of stuff about Star Wars and the Star Wars universe, pre and post Disney, that, I know we could sit here and talk about it for hours and hours and hours. And there's the whole Disney thing, and we need to talk about that. And I know a bunch of people just gritted their teeth or, possibly threw something across the room. I hope it wasn't something valuable or breakable. Because once Disney came into the picture, things changed. Were all the changes for the better? No, they weren't. Now, the reason I'm saying that, and I will admit, because Terrence is giving me the hairy eyeball and looking at me like, "You better admit it." For a cute little rubber duck like he is, who's an excellent co-producer, he can also be a dreadful nag. Part of my reason for saying that there were some things that I don't particularly like about the House of Mouse taking over the Star Wars franchise, and I'm not knocking Mickey, so all you Disney fans, don't send me hate mail. But once Disney got their hands on Star Wars, there was a whole bunch of canon that got booted out of an airlock. And at the risk of being selfish, I liked that canon. There were a ton of books that had a lot of stuff in them that were written after the original series came out. And there were lots of really great books. Splinter in the Mind's Eye, the Han Solo trilogy, a whole bunch of other books that were really, really amazing and cool and wonderful. And after Mickey and the gang came along, that all went shove. Does that make me happy? No. When the Solo movie came out, the fact that they were like, the company line was, "Oh, everybody's always wanted to know Han Solo's backstory." okay, I can't speak for everybody, but I'm part of everybody, and this part of everybody was like, no, I didn't. Everybody wanted to know who Han was, where he came from, how did he get the Falcon, how did he meet Chewbacca? No, I didn't. You know, I, or I don't want your version because I already had a version in my head, or we had, all kinds of other versions beforehand. But am I saying that because I wasn't particularly nuts about the Solo movie? I liked parts of it. There were other parts of it that I was sitting there going, what? But spilt milk, all that. But the thing is, with Disney, I was like, some of this is not going to work. And I know it's not going to work. Not because I'm any kind of a genius or anything like that, but I was like, some of this is not going to work. And then they did the hotel thing, the hotel experience. And that was the thing I was like, this ain't going to work. And when we heard how much money they wanted for it, I was like, oh, I have a very bad feeling about this. And sometimes I really do hate to be right. The hotel thing is come and gone, and we'll just leave it alone. But I mean, there's other parts of Disney working with Star Wars and making Star Wars part of the Disney sphere, I guess. That is great. I mean, I'm sure more than one person has been moved to tears seeing the Millennium Falcon up close and personal. I would. I mean, the fact that you can actually build your own lightsaber, your own not working lightsaber. I mean, it lights up and everything like that, and it makes neat noises and stuff like that, and that's amazing. But doesn't work like work. I mean, everybody else wants flying cars. I just want a lightsaber that works, damn it. Although I have been told by certain people that I live with, if we ever wind up actually being able to obtain a working lightsaber, that I'm not going to get one because I'll use it. He's very good to me, and he's very loving and very special. There are just occasions when my pudding is right and it annoys me. This is one of those times. But the fact that you can build your own droid at Disney. I mean, how many places can you go to and say, I came back from Disney World and here's my droid? That's awesome. So, I mean, I kind of take the whole Disney Star Wars things. I really kind of tried. I'm 50% wait and see, and 50% I'm not hoping for, magic. I don't know. I still kind of feel that way. But when it comes to Star Wars itself, I mean, people say, well, what does it mean to you? I mean, you already talked about how it was kind of like your stepping off point for finding other forms of media that you loved. I mean, I remember being a young girl and hearing a commercial for one of our local stations. They had they were doing a commercial for a show called Battle of the Planets, and they called it the most exciting show since Star Wars. And think up went my ears. Battle of the Planets, as a lot of you probably know, is the Science Ninja Team Gatchaman from Japan, brought to America, and a whole bunch of stuff got done to it so that they could show it on American TV, because goodness knows we couldn't show dead bodies and stuff and other stuff we won't even go into right now. But I got into that, and I wound up getting into anime through that. And back when I didn't even know the term anime existed. That was fun in the 80s, trying to find any anime and being like, hi, do you have any anime at this store? What's that? Well, it's animation from Japan. Blank stare. Have you heard of Japan? It's this country on the other side of the world, and they do cartoons. Do you have any? I have to ask my manager. It's enough to make you want to heave. But anyway, that was a long time ago. But people say, like, well, what does Star Wars mean to you? And it means a lot, obviously, because I've been sitting here rabbiting on for through this whole video that you've been patiently listening to. To me, Star Wars has a lot of different things that it means to me, not just the fact that that's when I started realizing, hey, all boys aren't obnoxious twits. But to me, it's always about small doesn't equal useless, and one person can make a difference. Star Wars taught me the value of friendship and of believing in yourself and believing in the people around you. And also that sometimes people get lost, and sometimes lost for some people can mean lost forever. But some people, there's still a little bit of themselves, their real selves, the self that you knew as a friend or you knew as a family member or someone that you cared about. And it might be buried deep inside, and they might have done some really heinous stuff. And some people don't come back from that, but some people can. And those are the people you have to believe in, even when they don't believe in themselves, especially when they don't believe in themselves. And they might surprise themselves, and they'll wind up surprising you too. And it taught me to believe that eventually good will overcome evil. It might not be right in front of you. It might not be a big explosion. It might not follow a big explosion like the Death Star or something like that. But eventually good will win. And I think a lot of people tend to forget that, or try to tell themselves that, there's no good and there's no bad. There's only gray. You can't have gray without having light and dark. So, but that's going to do it for my little old show here. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I didn't piss anybody off too badly. And I hope that you will click on the like and all the other little bells and whistles and things that are on here. And I hope you will take a look at all the other videos that are on this channel, most of which are done by my Puddin', my Imzadi, my Angel, my TC, who wants to write a book called Porg, the Other White Meat. He keeps threatening to do that. I think he's actually going to do it one of these days. He's a really great cook, so I'm sure it would be fantastic. But I hope that you guys have a wonderful week, and so does Terrence. And this is Kim from Kim Takes On, signing off for another week. And I hope you have a great week out there. Hope you keep rocking. And may the force be with you.